Brilliant. So welcome to Why is my relationship so fucked and how do I fix it? Um, this is the second one of these little webinars that I'm putting on, and it's come to my attention, obviously, over the last few years, how useful this information is to know. Even if your relationship is fine, there's so much that you can do when you really understand some core concepts and know what to do with them. Any relationship can be improved. And obviously, my job as a coach is couples relationship breakthrough coaching, essentially. I work with couples, and then we do individual coaching as well as the joint kind of couple sessions. And it is so incredible that every single time that I've got a couple in front of me, it is rarely the actual issues that are causing them problems. So yes, if you've got an issue like somebody wants kids and the other person doesn't, there are going to be some very difficult, irreconcilable differences, let's say, on I want to live like this, I want to live like there, I want to live in Switzerland and I want to live in Bulgaria. There's going to be some issues that are very difficult to live with. But the vast majority of things that I see are to do with what I call the container of a relationship. So this is the dynamic that the relationship kind of sits in and the way those two people interact. So in other words, it's not necessarily what they're fighting about, but how they fight with each other and how they treat each other and how they go into that relationship, what they brought with them into the relationship. And so by just going through a few concepts with you tonight, my hope is that whatever state your relationship is in or not, not in if you're currently single, but just to have those real aha moments about yourself, about the way you show up in a relationship and what you're attracted to as well, which is really important, and why the mix of of the blueprints, the relationship blueprints that you've got can cause so many problems and what to do about it. So my aim is not to cover everything, although that is secretly always my aim is to cover everything, but I will try not to. I'm going to try and be really, really kind of focused on just the bare bones that are really going to help you. So the stuff that comes up every time that I work with a couple, the majority of the time, and kind of share that with you today. And then hopefully that'll be super, super helpful. So the first question that that I always ask people is, why do you want to work on your relationship? So I have my beliefs about why you should work on your relationship. And when you realize that your subconscious, most of the time as a coach for 20 years, I'm very, very aware that our subconscious is in charge most of the time. And therefore it makes sense to be a master of your subconscious. But when you're in a relationship, there's the other person to deal with, which is, their subconscious is involved, which can bring up all kinds of issues of control and all kinds of things like that. But ultimately, we have this relationship blueprint in our subconscious, and it is driving our relationship, and it's creating the results for us. And to be able to understand that blueprint and then change aspects of that blueprint so that you can just have the relationship that you want, for me is like magic. Basically, it's a lovely, lovely thing. And in my experience, most couples have chosen each other for the underlying really good reasons. So even on the surface of it, they might be at each other's throats. Underneath each other, they usually have what the other wants, but they've got to grow in order to be able to get it. And that's something that not everybody's willing to do. But if you show them how, then at least they've got a chance. So I think partly you should work on your relationship because it's possible to do it, and you don't really want your subconscious running the show if it's not running it in the way you'd like it to be. Another one is literally the number of times that I work with very, very fortunate people, and as I count myself as being very fortunate as well. And I can tell you that it doesn't matter what these people have got in their lives. if if you're at each other's throats, and I can speak for myself, as Nick and I, we had the first 2 years of our relationship was just the hardest thing that we've ever done. Overcoming sort of our blueprint and the dynamic between them was just the hardest thing either of us have ever done. And I can tell you that we've been to some amazing places in the world. And, for example, we went to Cancun in the most amazing, amazing hotel room, and I slept on the bathroom floor sobbing because of one of the rows that we had while we were there. And I say one of the rows that we had while we were there, like it was constant. And although we do remember, those times, we had some positive experiences, I know the reality of it was very hard to enjoy all these amazing things because that one thing was going wrong. So I put relationships in the same kind of category as health, that it doesn't matter how rich you are, if your health is terrible, that's your problem. And that's all you can think about. So relationships, it doesn't matter what you've got in your life. If your relationship is awful, or if you want a relationship and you can't find one, it's just, it becomes the most important thing. Even to the point that, and there's so many books I can recommend on this, but even to the point that the research shows that couples who have difficult relationships and are arguing a lot of the time heal more slowly when they have a wound than couples who have harmonious relationships. So even your physical health, and you know that because if you've been in a horrible relationship, if you've been fighting, you feel terrible all the time. It's a constant source of stress. But it affects your health. And the book I would recommend is something called The Rabbit Effect by Dr. Kelly Harding. And it talks about the connection between love and health. Amazing, amazing book. And the other reason is 50% of marriages, it's about 42% now in the UK, end in divorce. So we're not really getting it right. Like on the whole, we're not really getting it right. And I see why people aren't getting it right. And there's definitely an aspect of getting in there early and telling people, do this before you get married. Just ask these bloody questions before you get married. And there's also an aspect of, okay, you thought it was going to be easy. Okay, you've realized it's not going to be easy. Here's what to do about it. And I think that's just missing from sort of mainstream, from school, for example. Nobody teaches you about your attachment style at school. So I think to be able to get to the end of your life and say, I have had the most amazing connection with somebody, great, but I've also worked on it and had the most amazing relationship. There are fewer things in life that to be more proud of, I think, than I had a relationship, because it's the hardest thing most people will ever do is to have a relationship, and all the difficulty that can come with that, but to want it to work is not easy. So it is quite the achievement. It's certainly been an achievement. I think Nick and I are quite proud of what we've had to go through to get to where we are today. And no matter what else is happening for us, the relief that is not something that we have to contend with, that we no longer want to kind of stab each other, with forks over the dinner table. That is lovely. So I thoroughly recommend learning everything that you can learn to make your current relationship just even better and more fulfilling. And if or to find someone and work on a relationship, but also to heal your inner wounds, which make things really difficult as well. All right. So why listen to me? Partly because I've been a coach for 20 years and I've seen all kinds of issues. And my big thing is about healing your childhood wounds, breaking through your and overcoming your obstacles. But the biggest reason is because I have worked really, really hard over the last 10 years to become the person that Nick and I needed and couldn't find. So when Nick and I loved each other so much, and it was so hard because it was like, we would describe it as like holding on to each other with one hand and punching each other in the face with the other hand. We were so desperate to be together, but just the pain of it, his reaction to my reaction, my reaction to his reactions was so painful. We just needed somebody to come in and sit down and say, right, right, kids, this is what's happening, and this is what you're going to do about it. And I don't want to hear any arguments, but this is what's going to happen, and you're going to be fine. Um, we couldn't find anybody to do that for us, and we searched high and low, did everything that we think of, went to every course imaginable, and finally we figured it through ourselves. And now I kind of do this for other people. Um, so I am very passionate about sharing this with as many people as who need it. All right. So, so let's have a quick rundown of the kinds of things. I've already said it's like the container that's the biggest issue. Oh, and by the way, I was watching 50 Shades of Grey, the one they got after they get married, for research the other day. And because I'm interested in purely for research, but for couple dynamics, because using pop culture is really good for helping people understand attachment styles. And what was hilarious is that they've just got married, literally just got married, and he takes her to this house that he's bought for her, and they sit and have breakfast, whatever. And she says something, or he says something about kids, and she says, "You do want to have kids someday, don't you?" I'm just like, are you joking? This is a joke. This is a joke, isn't it? Like, not only is he like the most toxic person you could have chosen, but you haven't even had that conversation about whether he wants kids or not. Like, okay. But people are watching these movies, and what I think is really interesting about the movies that we watch is all of them are toxic. The most dramatic, most wonderful movies, the ones that have everybody on the edge of their seats, the ones that we all kind of, oh, wow, that's amazing. They're all really, really dysfunctional. And there's very few that are really secure and healthy, because it doesn't make great television, doesn't make for a great movie. There's no passion and drama and will they, won't they, make and break up, make up, break up. The drama comes from the dysfunction. So that was just a brilliant example of not why their relationship is so fucked, because obviously it's toxic at the core, but the fact that they also don't know that they should have had those conversations, which I find really quite obvious. So what is making, let's go through the list. It's not just those issues, it's blueprints. It's the way that you have learned to have relationships. So, between the ages of 0 and 7, you are downloading how to have relationships. It is your attachment style dynamics. So one of the loveliest things is to be able to tell a couple the reason that you're doing this is because of your dynamic, and explaining the dynamic to them and have them go, oh, right. So that happens a lot. And I'm like, yes, that's your dynamic is the dynamic that I see all the time. And for the first time, they stop taking it personally. Like, that's a big step to say, oh, so we came into the relationship this way. Yes, you did. It's not the other person's fault. It's a dynamic. It's how, like jigsaw pieces. That's just what happens. So attachment style dynamics, incompatible conflict styles, although actually they don't tend to be a problem in and of themselves usually, because that's quite a mild problem. They're usually exacerbated by the attachment style dynamics. So most of the time, the attachment style dynamics and unmet emotional needs is the problem. So conflict styles is kind of how they hash it out, and that's going to be badly if they're incompatible. Somebody might be, get really angry, and the other person's like, oh, I just don't want to have this conversation. So it's harder to resolve differences that are caused by the dynamics and unmet needs. And this is just like a contents page, by the way, so you don't have to make notes. This is just what's coming. Childhood wounds and triggers. So if your partner has lots of trauma in their past, big T or small T trauma, they've just had a rotten childhood, then you could find that you're walking on eggshells around them, because anything could set them off. They get very touchy about things. And some clients send me text messages so that I can help them sort of work out where they went wrong, or where it went sour in the conversation, because they're like, why does it suddenly get so why does this person suddenly just go crazy at me? So they show me what happened, and it's like, oh yeah, they're there because they interpreted that as you saying they weren't good enough. That's why. So they've got a wound, and you didn't mean to, but you stepped on it, and the landmine exploded. So triggers are really important. We'll look at your trigger response loops today. That's massive if you can figure that out. Um, Generally poor communication skills. So instead of, I thought I told you to take the bins out, or I've asked you 4 times, why do you never do anything the first time? Instead of communicating your feelings the way that you might want to, learning what for example, the Gottman's soft startup can help, just so that if you're, if you find you get on the defense really quickly, uh, if your partner gets on the defense very quickly, the chances are you might be coming across very critical, and changing your approach might get a better result in the end. Lack of emotional intimacy. So again, I'm astounded when couples come to me and they don't know each other. They really don't know each other. They don't, they might have been together sort of 20 years, but they don't know about each other's childhoods. They don't know about each other's deepest fears, or what they want from a relationship, or what they dreamed of about relationships, or how their parents treated them or each other. Nothing. And they don't really, and that's about relationships. They don't really know much about each other's inner world at all. So I'm always astounded how little people who live together and have children together know each other. Um, Sometimes it's things like infidelity. So sometimes there's it doesn't have to be somebody being unfaithful with another person. There can be all kinds of loss of trust. Somebody spends a load of money without the other partner knowing, for example. They take out a loan against the house or something, or they've got a gambling problem. There can be all kinds of things that cause a loss of trust that needs to be dealt with and rebuilt. Sometimes a lack of polarity is the issue. These are kind of, I look at these as the issues rather than the container, although potentially the loss of trust, could be, you could look at that as an extension of a poor container, right? That something's happened that you didn't know about, and that's caused a problem because the container for the relationship itself wasn't completely secure. So working on the container is always really important. And then these are kind of little issues that come up, say loss of trust, not little issues, but as a consequence. And then lack of polarity. So this is when perhaps you love each other, but you're not in love with each other, and you don't feel passionate about each other, or attracted to each other, or just not having sex anymore, whatever whatever that might be. But the lack of polarity, often now people talk about being men being emasculated, and therefore they don't find each other attractive anymore. There's a lot of issues around that, and we put that all into the kind of polarity bucket. There could be other issues that again just require working through, but polarity is something that, again, it's something that every couple needs to know about, because you can create that physical attraction. You can create that, that magnetism between you when you know how to do it, and therefore you shouldn't have to expect that, oh well, at some point you go off each other. Like you have the honeymoon phase, and then, well, yeah, obviously it's going to get a bit dull. It doesn't need to. There are things that you can do to improve that. So again, it's just knowing how. And then unresolved conflicts or hurt. So somebody carrying the pain of something for years and years and years because you've never learned to repair, or one partner's terrified to bring it up because it's a sore point, so you never get resolution on it. Or some things, maybe you don't feel like you can resolve, but you just live with. So unresolved conflicts or hurts can ruin a relationship as well. So hopefully none of those are resonating with you, and that's none of those have happened for you. But I'm sure if you've had a relationship, at least one of those will have been an issue. So then we look at what we're going to do to fix it. And these are the sorts of things that we look at. Obviously, communication skills. Most couples don't know how to do a soft startup. They don't know how to express their perception of things. They don't know how to validate. They jump in and either try and defend themselves or fix the problem or, you know, soothe the other person without listening. There's lots of well-meaning ways to not communicate well. Obviously, there's ways to build emotional intimacy. The individual therapeutic coaching is the best thing to do, and polarity exercises and the couples breakthrough coaching. And I'll explain as we go along, you'll understand why the individual therapeutic coaching, you can do this by yourself. So you can affect your relationship even if your partner's not involved. Like even if they say, oh, I'm not doing any of that stupid, you know, emotional stuff. There's still so much that you can do by healing your own attachment style and working through your own triggers. For reasons I'll go into in a minute, but it's still possible. I do say, and I think this is really important to say up front, because this is what I would say to my daughter. So everything I run through, I'm like, if I would say this to my daughter, I'll say it to you. If my daughter came to me and she said, we've got problems in our relationship, her and her partner. My daughter's only nearly 2, so it's going to be a while. But let's say in 30 years, she comes to me and she says, you know, Mum, we've got issues in our relationship, but he won't talk to me about any of it. Well, if you have a partner that won't talk to you about your relationship, then you don't have a relationship. It's as simple as that. Because you have to treat a relationship like it's a third person, like it's a child, or, you know, some people call it a plant, but I think it's a little bit more than that. You have to look at it as something given to you to look after. And, you know, it might have some problems. But if it's only one of your responsibilities to look after it, then you don't have a relationship. It's not, if the other person's not interested, what's the point in being together? It doesn't make sense. If you're coping with everything in the relationship on your, you know, by yourself, and they won't talk to you, you don't have a relationship. So you're not losing anything ultimately. And the way and the time to find that out is really early on. You know, is to find out, will you talk to me if stuff goes wrong and we have problems? Will you actually work through it with me? Because ultimately you need to have us against the problem mentality. So anyone can have a problem, right? You don't know when you first meet someone if they're going to be an asshole when they're broke, right? You don't know that they're going to be an asshole when their parents are sick. You don't know what that person's going to be like if they're untested in a certain environment yet. So all you need to know is, if I tell you you're being an asshole, will you care? And if they won't care or do anything about it, well, then you're walking into a situation with an unpredictable future. But the one reassurance that you have is, no, I won't work on it with you if it goes wrong. Well, if my house was on fire and the person that I live with said, nah, I'm not putting it out. Okay. And what use are you then? What's the point of having a relationship? So you have a situationship if the other person isn't willing to work on it. And there are ways to help them feel more inclined to work on it, but ultimately they're giving you an ultimatum at that point by their inaction, yeah, or their inability. Now there might be things that you're doing to make them not want to talk about it, obviously, and you can work on that. But I think that is something I would tell any new couple. You have to work on it. You have to be able to work on it, even when there's nothing wrong. It's you against us against the problem, because any one of you could have a problem. One of you might, you know, end up with some mental health issues and not be able to work. And you want to know that if that's a problem for you, they will work on it. They will, you know, they won't let you suffer alone. So I think that's my big kind of point there, my rant. Okay. So does everybody know what blueprints are when I talk about relationship blueprints? In another sense, no. Okay. So between the ages of about 0 and 7, we are in this sort of state of hypnosis and we're downloading everything that kind of nature thinks that we would need to be able to survive by ourselves. So, you know, 100,000 years ago, if our parents didn't live beyond the age of 7, we'd probably be all right to look after ourselves, grow up, find a mate, and raise children. But the quickest way to get all that information in there is for it just to be role modeled into your subconscious mind. And there's a guy called Richard Swartz who talks about internal family systems. And I think this is, this is the most accurate way to describe what happens when I'm working with people, is that you role model, you essentially create parts of yourself that you've modeled on the people around you, your family members and so on. And then rather than think of it as being taught lessons, you just literally create like a blueprint of that person's behaviors, values, beliefs, and responses to you and everything. You just download it into that part of you in your subconscious. So you've got little mini versions of people in your subconscious that have all the scripts and all of the behaviors that you might need to model when you get older. You've also got the scripts and responses to how you deal with those people in your subconscious as well. So when you grow up, if you meet somebody who is like your mum, you've already got a script of, this is how I treat somebody like that. And it's super helpful from a nature perspective because you can get so much information into your subconscious in those years. And then literally you kind of go out into the world and recreate all those experiences. This is why if you have, and again, if you're in leadership coaching, Susan, this is for you. Every time I coach somebody in leadership, if they've got an issue with somebody, then these are the questions that I ask them, and I just say, right, okay, well, how does this person make you feel? So frustrated, it feels like I feel like they're trying to catch me out, or I feel like they've just got it in for me. I'm great and when from your, who from your early childhood or who from your past made you feel like that as well? And immediately they'll get it. They'll be like, oh, yeah, dad, mum, yeah, or a teacher, from school, or brother, sister. Because quite often colleagues take the roles of like brother, sister relationships and positions of authority. We project our one or both parents onto that position, and then we interact as if they're going to treat us the same way. So we can not only, this is really important to remember, not only if somebody acts a certain way or behaves in a similar way, we'll get sort of triggered into, oh right, okay, that's who they are, let's respond this way. But we also resonate with people out there who are like it. So who are like those versions of our family in our subconscious. So you might just go, why does this keep happening? It doesn't matter where I go to work, I get the same boss everywhere I go. They just wants to micromanage me or control me or get rid of me or compete with me. And that's because we firstly, we project that onto people as well. But more often than not, we just resonate with it, if that makes sense. Like at a quantum level, we're just sort of constantly trying to, like pattern repetition, we're just trying to resolve something. So in relationships, this is why you can take somebody who has, let's say a rotten childhood, or has experienced domestic violence, and you can put them in a room and ask them, of all the people in this room, who do you find the most attractive? And sort of hands down guarantee that they'll pick the people who are either, have the potential to be violent or have been violent. There's just something that resonates that says, oh, this feels familiar, this feels like home. And then that's nature's way of saying, well, look, you survived your childhood. Whatever your childhood was like, whatever your parents did, you survived it. Therefore, that's a win. Therefore, you want to find a mate who, behaves in a way that you're familiar with, and then raise children together in the way that you were raised, because that's a win. It doesn't care if you had a happy childhood or not, obviously. It just cares that you're alive, because that was, a win. So most of us are a little bit more aware than just picking somebody like a parent. But But what we don't see is what goes on underneath. So often we think, oh, I've cracked it. Like I thought I'd cracked it because I was like, no, I've been out with blokes like my dad. I've gone the other way. I'm going out with the more gentle, sweet, soulful men now. And ended up marrying my mum instead. So I just ended up with like all different attachment style to deal with. Um, and that was really interesting as well. So I thought, oh yeah, I've cracked it, nailed it. Got, avoided all these sort of control freaks and gone out with my mum. So it's very hard to outrun it, even if you think you've been really clever. So to understand it and understand what you're resonating with in that internal family system, I think is really, really important. And then just a nod to individual coaching later on, we actually heal that family system so you stop resonating with those people and stop kind of attracting them and being attracted to them. And also stop projecting. So, if you've got somebody who with a similar character in your vicinity, because relationships are a dynamic, it you're not just, oh, he's an asshole and I'm responding to him. It's never that simple. I mean, yes, there are assholes, obviously, but it's much more likely that something about you is triggering them and they're triggering you, and it becomes a loop. And there's four examples here of how that's true, because I get a lot of people who don't believe me. And I get a lot of people who say, couples, for example, one of the partners will say, no, I don't need to do any work on myself. It's my partner that needs to do the work, because they're doing something that you can look at as obvious. They can point to it and say, you see, they're the one that's, should be doing all the work because they're dysfunctional. And ultimately, we know that we tend to marry our unfinished business. And what we mean by that is we know that we do find somebody at the same level of trauma as us and then marry them. And because let's face it, if that person is so terrible, what is it about you that makes you want to stay there then? Because I was in a relationship with Nick saying, yeah, he's the problem. He's the problem. You can clearly see he's the problem. I've had great relationships. So it must be him because I'm great and he's a problem. And because I thought I could, I could see all the ways in which, he was a problem. I was so justified in my, no, he's a problem. Until I realized, I thought, well, hang on a minute. Why am I staying then? Why am I staying and being so miserable if this isn't familiar in some way? If I haven't got anything, why would I? And it was only then that I was, oh yeah, okay, yeah. So I have issues leaving, like my attachment style won't let me leave, and it's kind of expecting this sort of level of treatment, and my self-worth actually maybe isn't as good as I thought it was, and oh, okay, yeah, I get it now. And as soon as I realized, oh, okay, me feeling all these feelings is making him react that way, and then I'm reacting to his reaction and he's reacting to my reaction. If I just get myself out of that equation, either physically by removing myself, which I didn't want to do, or by removing my trauma, right, healing it, overnight it was different. Literally overnight it was, oh my God, he's actually really in pain. Oh my God, why would I ever speak to him like that? He's actually in pain. So the dismissive avoidance, if you're with an anxious attached and you want some space, to the anxious attached, that's rejection. Why would you want to be away from me? Am I horrible? Am I so terrible? Why don't you want to be with me? Why would you be with me and then not want to be with me? That's just mean, right? So when you overnight, you go, okay, no, actually, I'm fine. I don't need you to confirm every minute of the day that I'm loved. Actually, you find this really overwhelming, don't you? You're actually finding this really, really tough, and it's emotionally dysregulating for you, and you need to find some space. And I get it. And actually, it's not rejection. You just need some space, and I absolutely understand. And when you're ready to talk, come back and we'll talk about it. And I'll keep because you're conflict avoidant as well. I won't get volatile. I'll stay calm and I'll ask more questions and I'll validate how you're feeling, and I won't make it all about me. So there's loads that the person who thinks doesn't have any work to do is doing and can do differently to have a big effect on the other person who is seemingly to blame. But yeah, it's usually one person's just doing something that's more obvious to blame. But you're a couple, you're dynamic. It needs both of you to sort it out. So yes, if one person refuses to accept that they have work to do, I find it very difficult to work with them, because it's not, I'm not working on the assumption it's all the other person's fault. If you're staying, you've got work to do, and you can't influence somebody that you're triggered by. You can't positively influence somebody that you're triggered by. You just can't, because you can't see them as their own person with their own pain and their own issues. You're only seeing them in terms of how they're annoying you or they're upsetting you, which is, well, not seeing them as a real person, is it? So that has to be separated out. It is a dynamic. There is stuff you both bringing in. And that's not to say that some behavior is obnoxious, obviously, and some behavior should be absolutely not tolerated, in which case you should leave. You can still love somebody and not be with them. But on the whole, what I see in front of me is a dynamic. So yeah, so we'll go through attachment styles and how they interact. But obviously, couples do function as a system. And obviously we've got the Pygmalion effect as well, and the Golem effect, which is if you have sort of low expectations of somebody, they tend to rise to those or to stoop to those low expectations. And I've seen this in couples where one of them is so convinced that the other person is cheating, like just so accusatory and mean, to the point where the person's like, I would probably feel better if I actually just did it, because then at least them having a go at me would feel justified. Right? It's like you can understand that it's constant having to reassure, constant having to reassure. In the end, you just drive that person away. So in your expectations, in the end, you can create a self-fulfilling prophecy. All right. All right, so we've got some dismissive avoidance, we've got some anxious. Yes, Guido, you can share it far and wide. The Waltons were healthy. Yeah. They were. Oh, I love the Waltons. So we've got dismissives, we've got fearful avoidance, and have we got any anxious attached here? The anxious attached.
I think that's my third segment out of the four.
Are we all just
segment.
Wow, I'm impressed. We haven't got any anxious, just me then.
Jess.
Yes.
I thought, sorry, hi, it's me, it's Steph. Hello. I thought I was anxiously attached for years and years. And then I recently had a conversation with someone in the know. And they were like, you sound more like you're an avoidant. And everything I've read now about avoidant, I'm like, oh my God, I'm an avoidant. But the people that I normally attract are avoidants. And I've always thought it's because I'm anxious, but I'm pretty sure I'm avoidant. But I'm quite confused about what I am.
You can have both. Right, so this is really important, because remember what I said? I said I've been in relationships with my dad, and I'm like, not with men like my dad. Well, I was in a relationship with my dad, obviously, when he was my dad. But I've been in relationships with men like him, and I was always really anxious, really super anxious. Well, I was fearful avoidant. And then when I sweared the other way, I was less fearful avoidant and more anxious. So there was very different style, but I've also been in relationships with someone where I was more avoidant, so more sort of pulling away, and usually because they have the remember what I said about you've got that internal family system. So I have the potential to have the attachment style of my dad, my mum, potentially my sisters. So if somebody comes to me with the attachment style which is my baseline, which is anxious, I'm much more likely to be avoidant. Because that's like, oh no, I'll play that part. Because the anxious, like, well, what am I supposed to do with you? What am I supposed to do with you? I don't know. Like, so I'll just play one of the other parts, I'll be avoidant. which is
Yeah.
what my mum was. So I would say how would you characterize what you're experiencing, if you don't mind me asking? What are you looking at and saying I'm avoidant?
I'm kind of hyper vigilant, and I'm kind of looking for changes or fearing, you know, like someone's going to change their behavior or leave. But then I can also play games in the sense of I won't text first, I won't call, I'll kind of, sit on someone else texting me for a while, and just kind of play games, I suppose, and just pull back a little bit. And
classic fearful avoidant then.
mm.
Let me go through the way that comes down to kind of one distinguishing feature each, that without it you're not that. Okay, so should be seriously helpful. So our attachment styles are formed in the first year to the first 3 years, predominantly the first year, and it's usually our baseline attachment style. The way that we enter into relationships is from our first and primary caregiver. So the questions that you ask when you're 1 year old is this world safe? Am I loved? Does somebody come when I call? When I need something, how am I treated? Am I expected to cope by myself, or is there someone there to support me? Those are the sorts of questions that you're asking at such a young age. Is it safe? Am I loved? Do I matter? Nice and simple. And the answers to those questions then dictate how you're going to respond. So is it sometimes safe and sometimes not safe? Is it never safe? Is it always safe, or the majority of the time safe? The varying levels of response you get will determine your attachment style. So secure attachment style, generally speaking, I expect to be loved. I have no reason to think I won't be. It's purely a sense of compatibility. Some people can meet my needs, some people can't. I won't waste time with people who can't, because what's familiar to me is somebody who loves me, keeps me safe, and thinks I'm important. Simple as that. So no real questions. Quite nice and steady, really. The dismissive avoidant is someone who prefers not to have sort of deep intimacy, associates that sort of deep intimacy with overwhelm. And there can be lots of reasons for that, but they don't really want to find someone to complete them, right? They want a relationship, they want that closeness with someone to a point, but it comes with so much overwhelm and so much responsibility and so much to deal with that often they just prefer to keep distance. They're not running from it, they just don't necessarily want to lean into it too deeply. And the reason for that is quite often because they're very self-contained, so they're very independent, often carrying a lot of responsibility. And sometimes the childhood wound around the dismissive avoidant is, relationships are quite hard, and nothing I do ever sort of pleases anybody. They always just complain about me, and I don't want to feel shamed or blamed, so I'll just pull back and keep my distance a bit. So often a dismissive avoidant will go for these sort of more shallow relationships where they'll have a lot of friends, but not one, ride or die necessarily, but they'll just have lots of relationships where they can get out of them, that nobody's holding them accountable, because they do carry a lot of responsibility. They never feel like they're allowed to ask for help. They don't expect support from anybody else usually. This is the extreme, obviously. Everybody's on the sliding scale, but the biggest thing that I see with dismissive avoidance is they get a bad reputation for being sort of cold and dismissive, and they don't want to know about your feelings. The difference that I see is that the dismissive takes your feelings on and is responsible for them. So it's overwhelming that they're now got to deal with your feelings. And it's never about the dismissive avoidant, because they don't burden you with their feelings. So they're only ever dealing with everybody else's. which gets exhausting because inevitably you're going to attract somebody who is needy. Because in a way, it's like, look at those lovely dismissive avoidants. They're so stoic and strong, and they don't burden me with their stuff, which means they've got room for mine. They can, they can look after me. They look so strong and they're lovely. And you don't complain or show any weakness. So it's easy to put you on a pedestal because you look so great and so stoic and, well, haven't you got it all together? And oh, I don't, so you can look after me. And the biggest problem, the most toxic form of relationship is where the dismissive avoidant isn't seen as a real person, but as a conduit to meet their partner's needs. And when you don't do it, that's when you get attacked, blamed, shamed, and ultimately made to feel miserable because you're supposed to meet their needs. That's the contractual obligation, and you haven't done it, and you needed space, and you rejected them, and all hell breaks loose. And because you may have grown up in an environment where you did the same thing, so dismissives can be formed for lots of different reasons, either because the household just didn't do emotions and therefore stop that, we don't do that, no, stop being silly, stop being over dramatic, hysterical, or go away if we're going to be like that. Lots of kind of stoicism in the house. Or what's also familiar is an overly emotional and needy parent. So where the parent makes it all about them. And this is where the dismissive avoidant then grows up to kind of go, right, well, I'm not going to burden them. I'm not going to tell them about it because they'll make it all about them. So, and I see this mistake with parents, for example, if the child says, oh, I'm being bullied, and the parent goes, oh, no, I can't believe a child of mine is being bullied. Oh my God, I'm such a failure. I'm such a can't believe. And then the poor child's like, I've got to deal with you now. I've got to soothe you. This is my problem. Why bother taking it to them then? Like, that's what you learn is like, there's no point. No point. I'm not going to get what I need. I'll get my needs met elsewhere by myself. And then when I'm in a relationship, it's all about the other person. So that's the sort of most difficult relationship for a dismissive avoidant to find themselves in. Because, yeah, you're burdened by this person who really just wants you to meet their needs for them. And you become, I feel sorry for the dismissive avoidant because basically like being the parent of a newborn almost, that same craving to get away, like, I just need some space. You love them, but they're a lot, right? I just got to have some time to myself. And then the moment that you try and get some time to yourself, you're accused of not loving them. And that's yeah. So depending on your level of, let's say, dismissive avoidance, you'll attract usually the polar opposite in the other direction of anxious attached. So the more stoic you are, the more anxious your partner's going to be, most likely. Like that's what I see in relationships, that coupling, and the trigger response loop on that is phenomenal. So if you don't know this, if you don't know that that's what's going on, it can be really, really hard. So that's the dismissive avoidant, and so the critical thing with the dismissive avoidant is relationships are a bit of a burden. I like to keep my distance. That's why, Steph, you're not that. Because if you want to be in a relationship, if you're craving closeness and intimacy for somebody, but you're hyper vigilant, that's a different thing. The dismissive avoidant is just trying to have a relationship but really not have one if they can help it, like just not get too close. Like, can I just somebody be easy and leave me alone, is honestly how you feel. And their deepest desire is just to be accepted for who they are and left alone. Like, can you just accept me with all my flaws and not attack me? The anxious preoccupied, the defining characteristic here is that they chase and they never stop, right? So they want closeness and they will not give up. They won't shut down. They might shut down temporarily if they're hurt, but they don't tend to leave. They will just keep going. And a big characteristic in the extreme anxious attachment is immediate falling in love. You're the one. You're the one. Oh my God, I've only just met you, but I know you're the one. Like that red flag, run all the way. Like that's an anxious attached calling card, is the love bomb, the pedestal, you're amazing, oh my God. But the characteristic of an anxious attached is that they want closeness, they're craving it, and they will chase you to get it. Like that's what they need. The fearful avoidant is a mix between anxious and dismissive. So the fearful avoidant craves closeness. This is the passion. They love very deeply, but they've usually been hurt and therefore have like a hair trigger for rejection, and then they pull away. The anxious attached will just get really upset, will want to chase your car down the road while you're just trying to get some space. They'll chase your car down the road. The fearful avoidant will be go, well, screw you, I never loved you anyway. Like they'll be very much more kind of push, well, go then. And then when you actually go, they're like, no, please don't go. So the push pull. The fearful avoidant desperately wants to be in a relationship, desperately wants not to get hurt, but expects to get hurt. And so will often be with somebody who does pull away, right? Who does pull away or hurts them, not intentionally, but because of the attachment style. So that's why, Steph, when you said when you're hyper vigilant and playing games, and this is the thing, right? So think about the kid in the playground and dad's standing there like, oh, come on, I've got to go home. And the kid's in the sandpit and the kid don't want to come home. Now, how much does that kid love the dad, right? Like probably like so much, and craves closeness with the dad and everything. But right now in the sandpit, I want to play in the sandpit. I want to play in the sandpit and I want you to stay with me. So the dad then kind of go, well, screw you, I'm going home. Bye, see you. Bye, I'm going. And the kid's like, no, they won't go. They won't go. I'm gonna push this as far as I can push this. I'm gonna play the sand. And eventually there's a moment where dad's like, no, I'm going. And that's when the kid suddenly panics because they're like, oh my God, actually, I'm being abandoned right now, and freaks out and cries and gets upset and chases, right, to catch up. And not only does that create a fearful avoidant, by the way, like if you threaten your children with abandonment, they will become fearful avoidant because they crave attachment, they crave closeness. All children need a little bit of independence as they get older, as they start to detach from you. If you pull that, if you yank that and say, well, I'll abandon you then, if you don't do what I want, you can create that fearful avoidant. So you don't ever want to threaten to leave the children, because they will just inherently stop trusting that people will stay, and they start looking for the hypervigilance that you're going to leave. So someone just dropped off then because I'm anxious attached. I'm now worried I've been rejected. So that's triggered me. Hopefully they'll come back. So yeah, so that's the fearful avoidant characteristic, craves closeness, but will pull away if getting hurt, but will then chase if they really think they're being left. They might pretend they don't care and then chase after you, actually, when it comes to it. Lots of manipulation, games, all defense mechanisms, all, trying to work out how to get that person to stay with you so you don't ultimately trust that they will. The anxious preoccupied can be manipulative as well. Again, not through malice, I just want to feel safe. I want to feel like you're going to stay. And if you think back to it, literally name a movie with a couple in it, and we'll see if we can name some attachment styles. Let's do it. With some good love movies, romance movies that I might have seen as well. What have we got? Pretty Woman. Oh my God. What's he? Come on. What attachment style is he?
Avoidant.
Avoidance.
100% dismissive avoidant. Absolutely. And she?
Oh, I think fearful avoidant.
Avoidant. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So another, all the Disney characters as well, all the fairy tales. So Beauty and the Beast, we've got the parentified daughter, Massively like all about responsibility, self-sacrifice, probably more on the anxious attached potentially. And then we've got the beast, total fearful avoidant. Yeah, angry, shut down, pushes everybody away, but actually desperate for closeness and love. And I'm so gonna like write the sitcom of like this happily ever after is absolute nonsense, because you just know that as soon as Belle has kids and he's like, why don't you ever pay attention to me anymore? We used to read together and now you just want to be with the children. I might as well not exist. Yeah, it's not going to be happily ever after. What about Cinderella and Prince Charming? What's Cinderella?
Dismissive, avoidant, I'd say, because of the
Yeah.
sisters, stepsisters,
Yes,
and
absolutely.
stepmother, yeah.
And the prince?
Ooh,
It's only when you really think about it, because we've been spoon-fed this stuff all
Yeah.
our lives.
Anxious, preoccupied.
100% anxious, man. Like literally, she turns up instant. I love her.
oh yeah, of
I
course.
want to marry her. I'm gonna chase her down. I'm gonna chase her and make every woman try on a shoe because I've got to find this one person that I've met for 10 minutes. Yeah, that's anxious anxious preoccupied personified. That absolute I've just met you and I love you. See it in Frozen as well. The characters from Frozen. You might not have seen Frozen if you haven't got kids.
Yeah.
But Frozen, you've got a few characters there. So you've got what's the Anna, the
Anna,
younger
yeah.
sister? What's Anna, the younger sister?
Anxious, preoccupied, desperate for her sister's attention, isn't she?
Yes, but she's so lonely growing up in that house. Do you want to be a snowman? Doesn't have to be a snowman. Like that's every anxious theme tune. And then who does she fall in love with at the ball?
Oh,
The narcissist. What's his name?
oh God, I can't remember. It's a long time ago.
Can't remember his name. But basically, she meets this guy at the ball and falls head over heels in love with him first, and says, right, we're getting married, like on the same night. Anxious dad. And obviously he's dismissive, avoidant, and total narcissist. The guy with the reindeer, what's his name? Is it Hans?
Yeah, something like that. Hang on, just finding out now. Christoph.
Christoph. Oh,
Christoph.
Hans, maybe Hans is the guy that's
I think it's Hans, yeah.
not good. Yeah. What about Christoph then? Guy with the reindeer.
Maybe he could be a little bit anxious as well, anxious, preoccupied, or maybe he's fearful, avoidant.
He's actually secure.
Oh,
And you know this because it's really boring.
yeah.
There's no drama at
Okay.
all with him. Nothing. He just shows up for her, takes care of her, does his thing, doesn't put her under any pressure. Nothing's talked about. Like, he doesn't try and marry her at the end. He's just chill. But he clearly, likes her a lot. But yeah, so that's why because there's no drama there. And what about the sister? What's it? The Frozen girl. What's her name? Anna and can't remember. The Frozen.
My mind is dead tonight.
We haven't got Frozen in
Elsa.
our house yet. Elsa. Thanks.
Elsa.
I
Yeah.
haven't watched it with the kids yet. They're not into it.
Oh.
Elsa, yeah. So what's she then? She's hiding
Fearful.
away.
She's fearful, isn't she?
Hell of a fearful avoidant. Yeah, she's like hiding away, desperate for, for that relationship, but she doesn't literally, she takes herself away so she doesn't hurt the people that she loves. Right? She feels like she's toxic, she's gonna hurt people. So yes. So you could say dismissive avoidant potentially, but it's not through lack of wanting a relationship, it's from fear of hurting the people that she loves and being defective in herself. So yeah, so fearful avoidant. So that's fun. The Notebook, Noah and Ali. Anybody seen The Notebook?
No.
If you're dismissive, you probably
Years
wouldn't like that film because you'd be like, oh, gee, she's a lot. Gosh, she's high maintenance. It wouldn't appeal to you, right? If you're anxious attached, then you might be like, oh yeah, that's what I want. A love that endures, that, they get together in the end. It's all really hard, but they get together. What do you think Ali is? She's feisty. Obviously, you might not have seen it. Has anyone not seen it? Because obviously, I don't want to ask you about,
Yeah,
No, I
I've
haven't
not
seen
seen
it. No.
Okay. So let's find one that we have. Is it all making sense though? What these styles are? Okay. So the big common one is the dismissive avoidant and the anxious. That's the one that I see most of all. And even if you've got a bit of fearful in there, that just makes the dismissive avoidant cycle more dramatic, more volatile, because you've got a fearful avoidant in there that's essentially blowing everything up, like or pulling away or stonewalling or usually, causing some drama in there. So dismissive and anxious is a kind of ongoing issue, like you're just never quite getting your needs met. If you've got a fearful avoidant in there, it's tumultuous. It's much more likely to end up in problems, obvious, we need to sort this out problems, because there's much more conflict in there, and much more wild swinging from, okay, brilliant, this is the love of my life, to, God, I want to run for the hills.
That's very bipolar, isn't it, Jess?
Well, let's define bipolar. If you, because that's interesting, because if you're bipolar and you're talking about mania, where you've got all this energy to get everything done and you feel amazing, and then the next minute you just want to sob into a cushion and you're exhausted and you just don't want to do anything. If you took that into the relationship, it could look bipolar, but I think somebody who is bipolar in a relationship would look like fearful avoidant, because they're swinging, that's all. But yeah, but it's definitely not bipolar, like,
Okay.
definitely not the same thing. It is just trauma, that's all. Like the fearful avoidant, it ultimately, the same person that you craved love desperately from as a child is the same person that hurt you.
Yeah.
That's it. And it's very painful to have to get close with somebody but risk that they're going to do the same thing. It's terrifying. So
that's, according to your quiz, that's my primary.
fearful avoidant, yeah. And everybody kind of says, oh, there's loads of most people are secure. I was like, I bet 20% of people are secure and the rest are one of the others. Though, just look at parenting styles in, for example, I'm Gen X, but the parenting styles, smacking, the naughty step came in, a bit later. But then, the general parenting approach, was it that thing on the TV that, like, do you know where your kids are or whatever? Like, because we were just left to our own devices. There was more of that acceptable parenting back then, so it would have created quite a lot of fearful avoidance, I think. But just treat everybody in front of me as what is your dynamic. That's all that really matters. And what do we need to work on to make sure you can have the most amazing relationship? Because the anxious dismissive avoidant is the most common, and actually they have what each other wants. This is what's so lovely about it, is for the person who grew up never really feeling like validated and seen, and relationships are all a bit, I don't seem to understand them, I don't really want to get close to somebody. You've got, yet they're attracting this anxious person who's often larger than life, very emotive, very expressive, can do all the things that you weren't allowed to do as a child or couldn't do. And so they're the living embodiment of everything that you couldn't do as a child. And so it's natural that you kind of want to gravitate to somebody who's like that, because they're sort of telling you that it's allowed. You know, they're sort of saying that you can have emotions if you want. You can love this big. You can, you know, be this open and expressive if you want. And but unfortunately, and the same thing is that you could be this together. You could be this strong if you wanted. And you know, I want to be worthy of that. I want to be worthy of that love. I want to be worthy of that protection or whatever each other, you know, you're getting from each other. And then when inevitably you spark each other's blueprints and the prime sort of the childhood wound that comes along with these attachment styles, you end up blaming each other instead of realizing, oh, okay, like if I go out with somebody who's like, I remember going out with somebody who never did what they didn't want to do. They were so completely like, no, if I don't want to do it, I just don't do it. I'm like free spirit. Like I just do what I want. And I remember thinking, wow, I really admire that, because I've never ever been like that. I really admire that. It's so attractive. You know, that being able to do that, so attractive. And then you live together and you realize, I hate you. Because you don't do what you don't do anything that you should do. You just do things that you want to do. And I hate that because I can't do that in the end. So there's attraction, and then there's no, I can't live with that because I can't be like you. And therefore there can't be two of us like that. So there's lots of reasons why we end up kind of being annoyed by the very thing that we were attracted to at the beginning. Lots of things like that. So protest behavior. So this, if you're dismissive avoidant, you're aware that people have this protest behavior, but you may not have realized this is what it was. So when an anxious attached or person with an anxious attached style they just want reassurance all the time. They don't believe that if you say you love them today and then leave the house, that still stands, right? That they're not completely sure that you won't meet somebody at the petrol station and run off with them. So they need constant reassurance that they're still loved. And when they feel that that's not the case, when they feel rejected because you just want some time to yourself, they get dysregulated. And I mean dysregulated like a kid would be dysregulated. They get, their nervous system goes into fight or flight, and they respond to it with what we call protest behavior. This is not within their control, because if your nervous system is dysregulated and you feel like you're going to die, your body will respond in whatever way you learned helped you survive as a kid. So they will often do things to get your attention, to elicit reassurance from you, or somehow reestablish closeness. So that could be anything: manipulation, it could be begging, pleading, crying, shouting, you know, shaming, blaming, whatever button is going to work on you to get you to co-regulate them. Okay, so the worst thing you can ever do as a dismissive is run from that, because they can't regulate themselves. So if you can co-regulate them and just give them the reassurance that they need immediately, they'll be fine. And then what you can work together on, okay, when you talk to each other, you can actually, and you get that emotional intimacy, you can actually start to kind of figure out, like, just having the conversation. Okay, so for example, Nick, I know that he never, like, he wouldn't sort of necessarily ever say this, but I know that, like, if I said, oh, you've got a spare afternoon on Thursday, whatever, would you prefer to, you know, go and sit on the beach together and look at the sea and have like a really romantic afternoon? Or would you rather go and sit on the beach and have a beer by yourself? I know what his threshold is for needing that one, like for needing it to be by himself. And I no longer get upset that he would rather do that, because I just understand him, and that's nothing to do with me. Having had children, I understand what me time means to people now, and I understand that is not a personal affront to anybody, but you just need it. And so he would never ever, like, you know, say, I just got to get away from you. But I get it now, and I don't find it in any way, shape, or form triggering, right? Because we have talked to each other and we understand each other's inner worlds and what we need. And he manages expectations really, really well. So if you're this would probably be more on the kind of how to fix it. But even just as simple as saying, listen, I'm going to go and do this by myself right now. When I come back in 3-4 hours, whatever, I would really love to sit on the couch, watch a movie with you. Is that all right? Like, are you up for that? And just managing when the anxious is going to get there, like you're going to come back and then you're going to do this really lovely thing together, is often enough to kind of, oh, cool, yeah, okay. Because you're making sure they understand you're not trying to run away, that you just need some time, go and do this thing by yourself, and then you're going to come back and you're really looking forward to coming back. So it can be as simple as just understanding. Obviously, I'm a coach. I'm going to suggest you do the inner work so that you're not dysregulated at the idea of somebody going away. That's an obvious one. Yeah, that needs to be dealt with. That, you know, that the dismissive avoidant looks at some of the things going on for them, what they're coping with on their own, why they think they have to do that by themselves, and the responsibility that they take on, and any of the childhood wounds they've got. Yeah, those need to be dealt with as well. Right, so both partners need to work and address their wounds, and also how they react to each other. Because with the best will in the world, the anxious attached does tend to make, even if the dismissive avoidant opens up and says, "Oh, okay, I'll talk about my problems if you like," the anxious attached will often then do that whole, "Oh no, that's awful. That really upsets me that you're having that problem." And then the dismissive makes it, oh, no, I didn't mean to upset you. I won't talk about my feelings again. I didn't want to upset you. So just learning how to actually hold space for each other is massive. So yeah, so protest behavior, it's not their fault. The anxious attacks can't help it, but this is what you'll kind of get from them. Criticizing or blaming, withdrawing. So yes, so the sulking, the Steph, the playing games, that's, you know, that's also protest behavior. Even my little girl does it sometimes, you know, where I don't give her what she wants, or you know, she'll do the sad eyes at me and then just walk away. It's like, oh, rips my heart out. Oh my God, she's only like 20 months. She's figured me out. Testing the relationship, excessive reassurance seeking. So Steph, you mentioned a couple of those. I think they were on there. Okay. Cool. Okay, so the next thing I look at when I'm working with a couple, so we've got the dynamic. So it might be like, okay, right, so you're anxious, attached, dismissive, these are the likely problems that you're going to have. Is that the case? And they're like, yes. And we talk about those. And then the next question is going to be, okay, how well are your emotional needs met in this relationship? Because that 1 to 3, you know, that 0 to 3 period, that is what we're asking the world is, am I safe? Am I loved? And am I significant? Do I matter? Those are the 3 basic emotional needs. They're connected to our survival. So it's really important that we figure this out. And ultimately what we're asking is, how scarce are these as well? So it's not just, am I certain? Am I loved and important? But how hard is this to get? Is it very rare? In which case I'm going to need a really big bucket and collect as much of it as I can, because maybe I'll never have enough significance. So I just need to really chase that. And so you might do more attention-seeking behavior when you're little, because you need to know that you matter and you're not quite getting the reassurance that you need. So you up the ante and try to get more. So if you look at them as buckets inside your body or your head, these feelings every day of certainty, love and belonging and significance have to be met. If you don't meet these needs to some degree, you will feel despairing. So you will feel, you know, if somebody comes to me and they're depressed, I can tell you right now that they're not meeting at least one of these needs, probably all 3. And they're probably very low on all of those 3. Because, you know, if somebody is depressed, there's usually a lot of these sort of beliefs that have been triggered. So I'm helpless. I can't control the situation that I'm in. There's something that I've lost that I can't get back. So they're feeling isolated. They've lost something they can't get back. and then they're feeling worthless about it as well. So I can't control it. I've lost something and I don't matter. Like I don't feel important or good about myself. So those are so important, that you meet those needs by yourself, that you can sit in an empty room and feel a certain level of control. Like, I'm sure it'll be all right, is a great belief to have. I'm sure things will work out all right. They always do. Or I'm very capable, I'm sure I'll find a solution, is helpful. Love and belonging, I am lovable, would help. So if you don't believe that, it's going to be very hard for you to meet that need. But also I can connect to myself. I can connect to others in a positive way. That's really helpful. If you've got a belief like no one loves me, no one cares about me, then that's going to make that need very hard to meet. And similarly with significance, if you just feel like nobody wants you, like, if you feel bad about yourself, you're defective in some way, nothing you do will ever please anybody, there's nothing, you don't matter to anybody, it's going to be pretty hard to grow up and find a way to be significant. In a relationship, you might find plenty of ways external to you, like jobs and work and fame and fortune and things like that, and status and hierarchy and power and things. But in a relationship, that might be difficult. So coming into the relationship, you've got to know what level your needs are met at rest. Like, what are you bringing in? Are you bringing an empty bucket with a hole in it of significance that I or anybody else would never be able to fill? And this is true, because if you say nice things to someone and they go, oh, you're just saying that, well, their bucket's never going to be filled, because how are you ever going to do anything to make that person feel better about themselves? And being in a relationship is nice, to meet somebody else's needs, not be the only source of their emotional needs, but it is one of life's most wonderful things that, I can feel great on my own, but when I'm in a relationship, I get to feel all those lovely extra ways of feeling loved, safe, and significant. So yes, you don't want to be the source of your partner's emotional needs. You want to know where they are at rest. And if there are problems in that area, if you do feel generally worthless, then you should work on that, because no relationship is ever going to be enough to help you with that. It often makes this unfinished business as well. Like, if I could just get them to love me, I'd be enough. If I could just get this really amazing person to want me, I'd be enough. And then I'll finally be healed. And of course you won't, because it's like the never-ending, it's like one of those awful dreams where you just can't ever quite reach it, because this is the most toxic belief. So imagine that you do have somebody who loves you. That person that you've been chasing turns around and says, all right, I do love you actually, and I do want you, and you are magnificent, but you've got a hole in your bucket and you don't actually believe it. That person, you'll now start to look what's wrong with them. You'll be like, oh, hang on a minute. No, because I'm worthless. So if you now like me, oh, what's wrong with you that I didn't see before? Because you wouldn't like me if you were as significant as I thought you were. So do you see how it's never ever going to get satisfied in a relationship? So even if that person who you want to love you turns around and loves you, you'll find something wrong with them that means, oh yeah, no, I knew I was worthless all along. And they're just even more worthless than me. I was wrong. So you've got to work on your own needs and not expect the relationship to fill them. But if you've got a fairly nice level of need, a relationship can then add to it and make it amazing, like so amazing. Does that make sense? Yeah, like there's healthy and then there's unhealthy. Okay, so these are the questions that I want to know is, and I give them a questionnaire. So my clients get a questionnaire before we talk about this. because they have to go through it, and it's really important. So you basically, the questions are, how does your partner meet your need for certainty, love, and significance? What do they do that makes you feel safe? What do they do that makes you feel loved and connected? And what do they do that makes you feel significant? And if they don't do it currently, what did they used to do? So usually if somebody has decided to marry another person, there's usually in that moment, there's reasons. And those are always the reasons I'm quite interested in, because at some point you were sure. So what does your partner do that meets your needs? So as you think now, think about your relationships, or think of a really emotionally significant one. What have they done that's made you feel safe? It's usually nothing big. It's like, do what you say you're going to do. Take the bins out when I asked you. Lock the doors at night. Walk on the side of the the road side of the pavement, little things. Anybody got any ways their partner would make them feel safe? Yeah, that making you tea. Like just that, yeah. Does that make you feel safe and certain, or loved and significant? Or all of the above?
I think all of the above.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How silly, like such a little thing, isn't it? Like,
Yeah, because he's only done it in the past couple of years.
right.
Since I was made redundant and started my own business. And it was kind of like he started it when I got made redundant because he was obviously worried about me, and it's just carried on. And so I tell him he's my favourite husband.
Yeah. As he is your
As he
favorite.
is.
Yeah. Good. Yeah. So fixes things around the house. My God. Yeah. I love that. I literally love the fact that I've taken a big part of my brain that used to do all that stuff and care about the cars. And I literally go, I don't have to think about that ever again. That's really nice. And that makes me feel so safe that I just can say, Nick, something's broken. Can you fix it? And just assume that he knows how to do it. It makes you feel so looked after. Making plans, yeah, somebody sort of wanting to do things with you can make you feel safe. Yeah, brilliant handyman. What do they do that makes you feel loved, like connected to them? I think for Nick, that's definitely like a cup of tea. Such a simple thing. Or and again, he feels so loved when I say, why don't you go and have some me time? Like, which to me would be like me being rejected. Like, Jess, why don't you go and have some time by yourself? Like, oh, I'm so sorry, I must have upset you that you don't want me around. But he's just like, really? And I'm like, yeah, go get in the hot tub. He's like, seriously? I'm like, yeah, go get in the hot tub. Enjoy yourself. And like, oh, thanks. Like, so like, oh wow, she must really love me. So yeah, nice and easy, that one. Yeah, flirts with me, does things for me. Good.
My husband, while we've been here, my office is in the garden. He's come down the garden and brought me a cup of tea.
I hope he knocked first rather than scare the crap out of you. Just like,
yeah, he knocked first because I've got the blinds down, so he can get through the door.
Not like appearing at night. Yeah, that would good for him. It's these little things, often not the big things, that I think really matter. And they're the first things when you're annoyed at each other that get dropped as well. So, but they can be the first things that repair, the sort of silent, I'm not ready to talk about it yet, but here's a cup of tea. Good. And what about, and here's another thing, if you're a dismissive avoidant. So I love it if I ask Nick how he's feeling and he tells me. Because the dismissive avoidant will find all kinds of ways to be like, oh no, it's fine, no, I don't know, no, I don't need to talk about it. But when he actually says, okay, like, I'm like, oh yeah, cool, like we're gonna connect now, and that's really cool, and I get to listen to your inner world, and he trusts me with that, and that's massive. It's great, and it's a little thing, but I love it. And because I know how hard it is for him to, to just share his feelings and not feel, because naturally he would stem towards, I don't want to bother you with my feelings. And it's like, why? I wouldn't think twice about bothering you with mine. Right? I have a feeling and it's out of my mouth. I'm feeling this way, everybody. So I love it when it comes back at me. What about significance then? What do they do that makes you feel significant, or that just makes you just feel 10 foot tall or really good about yourself? Like over and above how you already feel. Like, what would mine be? Well, he says nice things, I think, when it's like the words of affirmation. Because the love languages, I think people mistake love languages, that they think it's only how to show love. But of course, we're looking at 3 emotional needs. So love languages can be, you might have one of those love languages that makes you feel significant, and one of those love languages that makes you feel loved, and one that makes you feel certain. An affirmation for me is always a really important one. So yeah, feelings validated, proud of you. I love it. Oh, reminds you of a great mum. Yeah, that's nice. When you see something from my point of view, yeah. So even just being validated. Yeah. And I remember saying that to Nick, like, don't have to fix my problems, just validate me, like, oh, it sounds like a lot to carry, that does. And that one's like, what's that show, Modern Family, where she's Phil's wife's talking about how she dropped them off at school or had a really horrible day, and he's been at the nail salon and they've taught him how to talk to his wife, and he's like, well, she doesn't want me to fix it, she just wants me to say, oh no, that sounds really terrible. And so she sort of she doesn't want me to say, why didn't you leave earlier if you were late, rather than, oh, that sounds like a drag. And I just remember that when Nick says that to me, like, oh, I don't know how you do it. I don't know how you do it all. I'm like, yeah, thanks. You really see me. Don't need to fix it. Just need that validation. Feel 10 foot tall after that. Yeah, being listened to, not trying to fix things. Anything else that makes you feel really significant? Come on, Wendy, you've been married for centuries. 40 years, you said. What does he do that still makes you feel significant?
To be fair, we haven't been married for 40 years. We were together for about 10 before we got married.
Oh, wow.
But
okay.
I know, it's a lot, isn't it? It came to my 18th birthday party. A lot of what the girls have said down here, and a lot of what you've said, it's all those things. I think the funniest thing that he does is, like, I'll say something like, oh gosh, I'm so lucky because this, that, and the others happened. And you worked bloody hard for that luck. Oh, thanks.
Right.
And it's validating, and also it sounds back to front. But years ago, I used to say, oh, but I'm all fat and ugly. I'm not at all, girls, actually, by the way. And he goes, you're not ugly. Because we all feel fat, don't we, on certain days? But he would never hold it in an argument. He would never say bad words in an argument.
Yeah.
So therefore, for him to go, if that's how you feel, that's how you feel. It doesn't sound. I said it's good job people don't listen to us.
But you know what? But again, how knowing each other is the most important thing that you can do, because to know that your partner would respond positively to one thing and that somebody else might respond negatively to it, but do what your partner needs you to do is everything. So
yeah,
knowing each other and then respecting each other. So me and Nick have quite a lot of banter. So we always joke about, Nick is a great cook, but he's always kind of says, oh, I'm sorry, as he puts it down in front of me. And I'm kind of like preemptively, I'm sorry. And then he comes up with some reason why he's sorry about it. And of course I can't kind of, I'm not the sort of person that would just endlessly kind of go, oh no, you're great. It's such a great, oh, it's lovely, it's brilliant. And in the end, I just go the other way, and I'm just kind of going, well, I'll try not to be sick on the children or something.
Exactly.
Just, and of course, my son, Rocky's old enough to understand now, and he's like, why are you being so mean to each other? And of course, me and Nick are rolling back laughing about what's it going to be tonight? What's up with it tonight? Why isn't this really nice? It's always lovely. But he's like, why are you being so horrible to each other? It's like, no, we're not being horrible. We're best mates. Like we're bantering with each other. Daddy's cooking is amazing. He knows it's, well, he probably doesn't know it's amazing. I tell him it's amazing all the time. So, but yes, on the outside, people wouldn't get it. And I think that's really massively important. So yes. And if your partner said, don't do this, it's upset me, then you shouldn't do it because it's upsetting them, and you shouldn't say it. Just do what they do like to do.
Yeah.
So yes, so I think that's the most important thing is that and then the other question on the flip side is, what do they do that threatens your needs, which is arguably more important, because if they are threatening your needs, that is where most of your negativity is going to come from in the relationship. So what do they do? And then this leads on to the trigger response loop. So think about, what do they do that threatens your needs, or what could they do that would threaten your needs? So would make you feel unsafe or helpless, or, would make you feel less significant, would make you feel disconnected. Yeah. And I think there are some things that you need to know, not just what your partner does, but then you need to ask your partner, what do I do that threatens your needs? And I remember Nick saying once that like years and years ago, because I've been in business doing coaching for a really, really long time before we met, often he would come up with ideas for things, and I would say, no, I've tried that, it doesn't work. And I would be very dismissive. And he said to me, it's really hard because I want to contribute, and I want to give you, I want to talk about ideas, but you literally just shit all over them really quickly. And of course, I wasn't, in my mind, I wasn't shitting over his ideas. I was saying, I've tried it doesn't work. Like, that's not what, that's not what I want to do. And for him, it was like, but I'm trying to contribute. I'm trying to think of solutions. And it feels like you're shitting on them. And I took the feedback and I was like, you know what? You're right, because actually you don't know that I've already done that and what the outcome was. And the fact that you're coming up with that idea is great. And I changed literally as soon as he said it. I was like, no, you're right. Okay, I'm not going to do that, because that would be horrible. And I certainly don't want you to stop contributing. I want you to help me come up with ideas. So what do you do that threatens that person's needs? We'll talk about the trigger response loop, because that comes into it. So you've got to understand, what is your trigger response loop? If you have been in conflict for a long period of time, there's usually the dynamic. And I remember saying this to a partner that I had many, many years ago. I was just before I learned NLP. And one of the things that somebody pointed out to me was the strategy that we had for arguing. It was like, right, you piss me off a million times. I then sit on it and I don't say anything because you don't talk to me about anything. So I sit on it for ages and ages and ages until I reach my threshold. And then you do one tiny thing, I explode and I tell you I hate you and that you're the devil. And then you storm off and don't speak to me for 3 days because I've been so horrible to you. And then eventually I feel so anxious that I come to you and apologize and beg forgiveness. You make it really, really unpleasant for me to have to do that, but eventually give in to me. And then I'm so grateful that we're not splitting up and that you're talking to me again, that we don't talk about it. And we go round the houses, and that's every time. And it was in the middle of one argument, just as, because I was getting so far, I was building up the courage to leave this relationship. We've been together for 9 years. And I remember literally in the middle of the argument, I was like, you see, this is the bit where you storm off and you don't talk to me for 3 days and pretend that it's me not speaking to you, but it's actually you not speaking to me. And then in 3 days, I'll come to you and blah, blah. And I just couldn't handle that level of like pointing it out. The outrage. But it was like, yeah, this is boring. This is just boring now. So if you know what the triggers are, you can pattern interrupt, okay, and then work through it. So here's an example. So this is sort of a high level example, but it's the anxious, dismissive, general trigger response loop. So let's say somebody's done something. Let's say the dismissive says, oh, I think I might go out with the boys on Friday for a drink. The anxious says, is now angry. You treat me so badly. You never want to spend time with me. So they complain. And then the dismissive avoidant says, basically, okay, now you've had a go at me. I'm even less inclined to spend Friday with you. And I just feel like I'm attacked. I didn't do anything wrong, but you're attacking me and tell me I'm awful person. And then because you're kind of defensive, because the trigger makes you feel sort of angry, and then you get defensive because you want to point out that you haven't done anything wrong. The very act of being defensive and pointing out that you haven't done anything wrong invalidates the anxious attached person, because honestly, they're trying to reconnect with you, and you've just doubled down essentially and said, that's why I don't want to connect with you. And then because you've been defensive, the anxious attached now feels more unheard and more unloved, and then will complain even more that you treat them really badly, making you feel more scared, blamed and fearful. So you get more defensive, and so on and so on. So it becomes like a chase, pull away, attack, retreat, attack, retreat. That loop could be made up of any one particular issue. So for Nick, when we were together at the beginning, we had issues that we weren't working through, but he kept going cycling. So he kept going, he was a member of a cycling club. And one of the issues that I had was like, you just get up like, right, it's time for you to go cycling now. Be like, oh my God, like I'm trying to resolve this and you're just going to leave me in the middle of this. So I used to get annoyed that he could just go to cycling and switch off, and it's like that saying to someone like, can we not just have a nice night? I don't know if anybody's ever said that to you. You're the dismissive avoidant, maybe you've said it. But like, oh, do we have to do this now? Couldn't we just have a nice night? For the anxious attached person, they can't just switch it off and have a nice night. They are dysregulated. So somebody's saying, oh, we'll just talk about this later. It's like, ugh. Like, it's like, I'll give you oxygen later. They can't handle it. So that kind of, chase, run away. It could be anything that you're arguing about. So with Nick, it was like, you're going cycling. I'm being rejected. It's like, you're not. I'm just going cycling. That is you rejecting me. There was no way that was going to get resolved. And also then Nick just said, like, you don't want me to be happy because you don't want me to go cycling. It's like, I do want you to go cycling, but I want you to work out this fight with me. I don't want to be on your timescale. I want you to be on my timescale, because I'm then left dysregulated, not knowing if we're going to have a relationship, and you get to go and have fun and just switch me off. So yeah, that used to wind me up. But again, the argument wasn't about going cycling. Do you see what I mean? So if anybody, if he was to talk to anybody, be like, oh, she's got a real big problem with me going cycling. It's like, I haven't got a problem with you going cycling. It just so happens that cycling is the thing you go to avoid me. So getting to the core of whatever this loop is really important, because it's not about being with the boys, or it's not about, most of the time. So it's about this loop that you're in and the unmet need. So me feeling abandoned, that's the problem. You needing to escape from me is the problem. So anybody got their own trigger response loop that they want to go through? Anybody in one now that they're in? Probably not. I don't know if you've got one, or anybody know of any ones you've had in the past. Anybody know what their triggers are? Go on, Jen.
Oh, go on. Oh, it's weird because it's definitely changed now. But when I first met Mike, I was definitely the anxious, preoccupied, the chaser, the oh my God, put them on the pedestal. I'm in love. First date, definitely me, Jess. I was like, oh my God, she's talking about me. Anyway, so when he used to go out all the time with the boys, I'd have this suffocating, like uncontrollable feeling of rejection every single time, and it was really scary. This emotion that it would bring up at me, and it was a real problem. So it used to happen. And just gradually over time, I think over 15 years being together, it's not there anymore. So when he actually says he wants to go out with the boys, I really like that feeling because I get to have a little bit of space. So it's completely reversed. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a big trigger, and he knew that would be a trigger. So when he knew he wanted to piss me off, he would say, "I'm going to go out now," and it would just be ah.
Yeah. And that's really, it's really hard because when you don't understand and have the labels and the language, because that's one of the things that I don't like labels trapping you in something, but my God, can it liberate you when you can label something and ring fence it and say, oh, that's that. Okay, I've got it cornered now because now I can put words to it. I can contain it and I can control it if I've got words to it. I now know how to interact with it, and I can take it out of me. Because that's the thing, when it's in you and you're in the space of it, it's very hard to control. But when you go, oh, that's my belonging to me, but not me, that's my fear of rejection coming.
Yeah.
And that's my protest behavior is, my crying or my, my manipulating or my or whatever.
Embarrassing looking back at it.
It's always in retrospect. It's like, God, how did I feel like that?
I know. Like I'm possessed or something. It was weird looking back at it. I go, wow, what was that? That was interesting.
And I think it's really important for people to talk, like anxious and dismissive avoidance, to actually talk to each other about this who aren't in a relationship. Because when somebody you like says, oh, I just can't stand it when they go, and the dismissive avoidance go, but why though? Like they can ask you those questions without, I think it's really important that we have these sort of conversations outside of the relationship because there's no defensiveness. There's just, I don't understand though. What, can't you just have time for himself though? And you can then say, yeah, but I'm worried about this and I'm worried about this. And sometimes it's just not even, I think about anything, I just feel dysregulated. Like I just, like you say, possessed. And I 100% agree with you. And this is just literally like a PTSD effect to feeling like you did when you were 1 year old and you wanted somebody to come and they didn't, and your body went into this sense of absolute kind of apoplectic. I've got to have my needs met because I will die without them. It's so dysregulating. And so whatever you did to survive as a kid that helped you get your needs met is what you're feeling like doing as a grown-up, whether that's people pleasing, whether it's trying to be the goodest girl ever, and then they'll come, they'll love you, and try not to be a problem, or shouting really loudly, or making a big fuss. What is that work to get that parent to come back and feed you or to hold you? Your brain says just do that, and then they'll come, then it'll be all right. The dysregulation is real. And the dismissive avoidance are no less dysregulated. They just, their option is to go, is to pull away, that rather than stay. But they find it very overwhelming to have somebody who's dysregulated, in the same ways that a parent with a child that won't stop screaming feels eventually like, I have to get away. I don't know what to do. Now, the solution, oddly enough, is actually to lean in. So yes, you can do the therapy, obviously, on your anxious attachment, and you can do therapy on the overwhelm that you feel as a dismissive. But actually, that one of the things that people don't realize is that if you actually lean in to the anxious attached, it stops. And what I mean by that is, if if you give them the regulation that they needed as a child, their nervous system relaxes. And then when you're reliable and predictable, that's enough. They become healed through it. So it isn't only that, therapy isn't the only way through. If you say, this person that I love is dysregulated at the thought of me leaving because they're being transported back to when they were a baby. If I was with that child, with that person that I loved when they were a baby, would I pick them up and cuddle them? Probably would, because I'm not a mean person. So I would cuddle them, and I would feel terribly sad that they felt so terrified. And I would hold them until they stopped crying. And then I would want them to be soothed, because that's horrible for them. And if you love that person and you can lean into it and know that it's not forever, that's important, because Jen, you're living proof. It's not forever.
It
I'm
works.
living proof it's not forever. Because everybody has a convincer strategy. Every single person has a convincer strategy. And what that says is, how many times does something need to happen before I'm convinced? And that could be, how many times does that person need to lean in and soothe me and show me that I'm loved even when I'm dysregulated, and soothe me when I'm dysregulated, and love me when I'm dysregulated, before I actually believe it's always going to be that way and they actually do love me, and if I do need them, they'll come. Some people do have a strategy that is very long. Like, let's say they never believe it. That's very rare, that they would just never believe, they'd always have to be regulated. I would hazard a guess that if you measured this in a laboratory, which I have not done, I would hazard a guess that it takes 3 years. Because that's the same amount of time that your mum or your primary caregiver would have had to have done it to create a secure attachment. So I'm guessing 3 years tops, but it could be 3 months. It could just be lean in until they're reassured. That is the easiest way. But you see that the problem with being dismissive and avoidant is you feel engulfed by it. So it's very hard. It's almost as dysregulating to be the source of somebody's needs as it is to not have your needs met. So if you can find a way and say, well, look, let me try it. Let me see what happens when I just hold that person. And I say, do you know what? I don't want to go out with the boys. I want to stay with you. Can I stay with you? Can we do something together? Can we braid each other's hair? Can we just stay together and I'll just never leave you? Eventually the anxious attachment is going, you can go. It's fine. Like, seriously, enough now. There is a point at which you don't want to braid each other's hair anymore. Like, there is a point at which, you're happy. It's like, no, it's fine. Can I actually sit in your skin? Like, can I just be in your body? Like, can we just be one person? Can we connect more deeply? There is a point at which it's done. But again, you might have your own issues in the way of doing that. It might not look like the healthiest solution, but if you're desperate, it's worth a try. See if you can regulate that person. The other thing is, you must have your own shit to deal with, because for both partners, that to be with someone who's that dysregulated, you must have your own trauma to heal there. Maybe nobody did that for you, and that's why you don't know how to do it for them. Like, you wanted desperately somebody to do that for you, but it was never allowed. You were never allowed to be that needy. So the thought of giving comfort to somebody who is, does feel, entitled might be very hard. Same way as, me saying, yeah, it's great that you do whatever you want to do and never do anything you don't want to do until I have to live with you. But actually, do you know what I mean? Like, no, you must change now, because it's upsetting me that you're like that, because I can't change. So there's some stuff you can do together. There's some stuff you can do apart. But the point is, if you love that person, get to know them and understand where it comes from, label it, take it outside of yourself and understand it. And you don't have to take it personally at that point. So that's the trigger response pattern. And again, Jen, if you were this is why marriage counselling or, couples counselling often misses the mark so massively, because in couples counseling, you might have gone to that couples counseling and you might have said, I just don't understand because he just wants to go out all the time and just he doesn't want to be in the relationship. I don't really get it. And then you end up talking about, well, okay, what about if I go out just 3 times a week? Is that okay? Is that a good compromise that we should have? And you end up working on the superficial stuff and finding a compromise rather than the really deep stuff and actually working through what is going on for you and what is this all about really? Because it's the container that's the problem, not the issue. And I think that's where couples go to talk about. I had one client that had been going to couples therapy for about 3 to 4 years because they were on a fertility journey, and they went every Wednesday. They talked about how they weren't getting on. And she said, I'm so sick of talking about it. Nothing ever gets resolved. I'm so sick of talking about it and just sitting there listening to what's wrong with me. Like, I hate it. And it was like, well, yeah, because you haven't solved anything. Because you're talking about the fertility journey as being the problem. It's not the problem at all. Your needs aren't being met. You don't communicate. There's deeper stuff here. So for me, I want to go to the get the dynamic, and sometimes that's enough just to say, look, here's the dynamic. That's sparking her unmet need. That's sparking your unmet need. This is what you need to do about it, and give them like a plan. And that's sometimes enough. And then at other times there'll be these things called prime concerns that's causing the big triggers, and those are things that you can work through. So if you want to find a prime concern in a relationship, and obviously you can do these outside of relationship as well, but if you think about the relationship, this is the question that I ask. So I say, think of a blissful time, like a blissful memory at the high point of the relationship. And for some people, it's that moment of like getting engaged, or that moment where you're like, I'm going to marry this person. Because obviously something must have happened to make you feel, wow, I'm going to marry that person. And what was the memory that was so blissful, that was so brilliant? And then you ask, what was present in that moment that's now usually absent? Like, what was in that moment that made it so amazing? And they might just say, God, I just feel like I felt so seen. I felt so appreciated. Whatever it was big. And the reason that you ask what's absent now is because when it was good and that thing was present, and now that thing's absent and it's bad, it must be important. What was it? Yeah. So what feeling in you was present? And in that same moment, what was absent that is now normally present? So again, what was missing in that moment? Was it, oh, we didn't have any stress, we didn't have any, concerns, we didn't have any threats to our relationship, it was just us in that moment, whatever. And then, yeah, normally there's a lot of other things demanding our attention, let's say. Those 2 questions will give you a massive and fast insight into what's the fastest way to dysregulate this relationship. Because if in the moment that it was really, really good, you thought you were going to get this forever, right? You thought, oh my God, I'm going to get this level of being seen forever. It's what I've always wanted. Chances are that's a big thing for you. And you thought you were going to get it forever, but something happened and you don't get it. And now there's an unmet need there. There's an unmet need. There's a problem because something you thought this person's going to do, they're not doing. Or similarly, something that this person did made something else disappear, right? So maybe this reassuring person made all your worries disappear. And then they stopped reassuring you, so now your worries came back. So there's a real salve, that this person did for you at one point that now maybe they're not doing. And when you know what that is, that's usually your prime concern. So for me, it was a feeling of being wanted. And that was in the moment where I was like, oh my God, I want, I remember really liking Nick because he was the only person that really helped me. Like, even even my partner I had before, who, was lovely, so lovely. He never really sort of, with the work stuff, he never really went out of his way to help me. I always paid him like to help on events and stuff. Bless him. I still love him to this day. He's a lovely, lovely guy. But he never helped me. It was always the other way around. If anybody was going to be helped, it was going to be him, and I was more the independent one. But Nick was the first person that kind of went, no, I'll do it. I was like, whoa. It was a very Princess Bride. You've seen that film where she goes, farm boy, fetch me that picture. And he goes, as you wish. That's like a dream. But that just kind of somebody sort of like that acts of service. Like I'd never had that acts of service before. And there's this friend of mine who just keeps showing up and doing it, even though I'm like, no, it's fine, I can do it. He said, no, I'll do it. Okay. Wow. Whoa. That was like, I like this. This was amazing. And then that was a massive one for me. And then the other one, because the prime concern was nobody helps me, or nobody can help me. So for this human being to show up and say, well, I can, that's my deepest like childhood wound, whatever, and you just salved it. And I say salve, not solved, obviously, because it didn't solve it, just salved it. And then then when he put his attention on me as well and made me feel like he liked me, it was like, oh my God, I feel really wanted and special. And again, childhood wound number 2, salved that one. It's like, I think I love you and I want to spend the rest of my life with you and I want all your babies, like immediate. And I did have all these babies, to be fair. So yeah. So I did. And they're really lovely babies as well. So with this salve, and then you think about, what did I do for him, right? Because there must have been a similar moment at which he was like, oh, actually, fine, I'll marry you, whatever. Go on then. There must have been that kind of, I want to feel accepted. I want to feel accepted. I want to feel loved, and safe. Like his were just, I want to feel safe. I want to feel accepted. For him, he would have those prime concerns. And if I made him feel safe and I made him, feel accepted. And then, of course, what did our trigger response loop do? Totally blew that out of the water. Because did he feel accepted when I was rejected? When I sensed he was going to reject me, go off somewhere without me? Like, damn well not going to accept that. And when I'm attacking him and saying, well, you're so mean, I can't believe you're so mean to me. Why are you even bothering? If you're so, if you don't care about me, why are you doing this? Why are you torturing me? And he didn't feel very accepted or safe in those moments. And I didn't feel very wanted, or that he was helping me. He was very much not helping me. So we both, like, in those moments, we were capable of salving, right, those wounds. But then the dynamic inevitably kicks in and those wounds just get exacerbated. So now the very source of that person's potential to solve something for you becomes this massive source of pain. And that's what I see every time. Like that's massive. So prime concern questions are critical in that relationship. What is that? What did you think that person was going to do for you that they then failed to do consistently? And that's where we can have the individual breakthroughs with that. Because ultimately, yes, if he knows, okay, I just need to, fetch that picture. I just need to acts of service and you feel great, brilliant. But it probably makes sense for me to say, well, maybe I should work on that core belief that nobody ever helps me, or that, that I'm not wanted. Because ultimately, remember, if you've got a belief, you are going to make it true through the self-fulfilling prophecy. You are going to project that. And so the minute the partner does something wrong, you're going to project it all over them. So imagine then healing it so that that actually, no, I am wanted, and I am, for him, I am, I am accepted, I am safe. And then meeting each other's needs on top. Like that's the ideal. So you don't react when they don't do it. So you don't enter that trigger response loop. But when you do remember to do those things, it's fireworks. It's brilliant. Yeah. There's no negative aspects to it. So the individual breakthrough, these are the questions. I'll put them up. If you're a coach, you already know that that's how I work. So I ask people, what's the trigger and how does it make you feel? Give me 3 examples. So Jen, it would be, if you were sitting in front of me, it'd be like, right, okay, when he says he's going to go out with the boys, that's an example of the trigger. It's not the trigger, it's an example of the trigger. But how does it make you feel? Give me 3 examples of when this happens. Either 3 times he's been out recently or 3 types of similar thing that create that same feeling in you. One question is, who made you feel like that in your past? 0 to 7. Who also had the power to make you feel that same way? I'm not asking you for real, Jen. I'm just saying, you feel free to think about the answers, but I'm not putting you on the spot there. But you know, who made you feel like that in your past from 0 to 7, if you can remember? You don't have to remember, but most of the time it's like, oh yeah, that makes sense. And then we would do something called the re-imprint technique, which is based on the internal family systems model, and it's a technique by Robert Dilts. It is amazing. It's so powerful, and it changes those parts of yourself in that internal system. So if you've got, you know, I've let's say I've got that part that's that is resonating with the dismissive avoidant, because my mum was dismissive avoidant. If I'm resonating with that, then I need to heal the part of myself modeled on my mum so that she's secure. Because then I'll resonate with people who are secure. But also another part of me now just became secure. So now I'm going to be resonating as more secure with more secure people. Now, that doesn't mean you're going to run out away from your partner and find somebody else. What it means is that you'll be projecting a secure version onto your partner and acting as if they were secure. And it changes immediately the dynamic, because you stop projecting, because half the issue is that you're projecting, for example, you know, that him going out with the boys as rejecting you because that's what you experienced when you were little. When you stop projecting that onto him, that he's not rejecting you, he's just going out with the boys, it's much easier not to get upset about it, because you're not projecting that same thing onto them. So you start sort of separating things out. So there's that one, and then whatever core beliefs, like the prime concerns as well, you individual triggers, individual breakthroughs for the triggers. So re-imprinting for the triggers, and then re-imprinting for those core wounds of, you know, I'm not wanted, I'm not enough, I'm not accepted, those prime concerns. So those are the main things that we work on. But if you do have a shitty blueprint and you keep going for the same type of person, the re-imprinting technique is the one that I recommend, because you are literally programmed to find somebody like one of your caregivers. And the one that you struggle to get love from the most will be the one that gives you the biggest high when you meet them. So I was never like really properly into some of the men that I met, but the ones that triggered my mum's attachment style, way more feelings. Like that was who I had much more feeling for. The big loves were always the dismissive avoidance. So yeah, because I craved my love from my mum more than I did my dad. Does that make sense? So yeah, it's worth doing that individual work, especially if you're looking for a relationship, because you'll guarantee that you're more likely to find somebody who's secure, more attractive. And here's anybody who is dating, who's listening to this or watching this now. The right way to do things is not to go on dates. Like, dates are the absolute worst way to meet anybody. Is bloody Tinder or something like that, where you literally meet up and go, oh, do we have a spark? I don't know, do I elicit your trauma? No, I don't elicit your trauma. Oh, I guess there's nothing here then. And we go home. And it's absolutely the worst way to meet anybody, because if somebody, like, you know, I meet somebody and they immediately make me have butterflies, that is anxiety. and trauma. And it is a red flag saying, yeah, I'm familiar for a reason. Like, I feel like you've known me for ages for a reason. If you've got a really clear system, internal family system in your subconscious, and you know that you only resonate with really secure people, fine, that's fine. But the correct way to meet somebody is to say, hello, hello, you're very nice. Yes, you're very nice too. I like meeting you. Yes, I like, this is very nice. It's very charming. Would you like to go for dinner? Yes, let's do that. There's you're a very normal person. And let's go and can you meet my needs? Because I have some other interesting needs to be met. And these are the sorts of ways that I like. And I'm going to give you about 3 months to see how well you do and see if you communicate with me. And we'll just sound each other out to see if we've got what it takes to make a really solid connection here. And that's really boring, isn't it? Nobody'd make a film about that. But that's how you should choose a life partner, is to make sure you give them time and space to see if they will meet your needs and communicate effectively and work through any differences. But we don't. We go straight into, is there a spark? Is there a spark? Right? So you're putting yourself under this huge pressure and you don't even know if you like the person. You don't even know, if there's a friendship here. So that would be my advice to my daughter, is just friends. Be friends. If you can be friends, you can live like together forever and ever and ever and have your best friend with you no matter what, through thick and thin. Like, what's better than that? Like, I married my best mate and I thank every day that we didn't go on a date. Like, it would have just been awful. So I'm not going to do conflict styles tonight just because they are very much superficial and in the grand scheme of things. What I would say is you do need to stack the positives. So you need a 5-to-1 ratio, according to the Gottman's research, of in daily interactions with each other, of positive to negatives. You need to respond to somebody's bids for attention. So if somebody says, oh, look, there's a new flavour of Nesquik out in the shops, you have to say, oh, is there? That's nice. And respond to it rather than just go, oh my God. Right? You have to respond, even if you're not interested, because they're your partner and they found it interesting. And it's more of a bid for connection than it is about the Nesquik flavour. Okay. When my son comes up to me with, like, look at my truck, man. Look at the wheels on this truck. I may not have a clue what is special about the wheels on the truck, but I know that my son is bidding for my connection. And so I have to care about those wheels on the truck so much, at the level of which I want him to know I love him. That's how much I need to care about those wheels on the truck. Okay. So even if you have a partner who's into stuff you're not into, if it's important to them, it's important to you. And you need to repair after the relationship. And the repairing is just, shall we talk about it? When you're ready, let's talk about it. All right. There's the soft startup, communication skills, blah, 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 emotional intimacy, blah, 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 emotional intimacy. You do need to get to know each other. I'm conscious of time. So the other, I'll have to do another session where we talk about that. So let's talk about, what do we do from here? Okay, so there is something called the NLP to Thrive app. It's a web app. Let me put my website in the chat for you. Obviously, you'll all get this, but you'll get this in the follow-up. So there's an app. So I just want to point you to more resources, basically. On my website, there is it's actually not on. It's on the other website. Hold on. So we've got an app now. That's a web app. I'm going to launch it fairly soon as an app on your phone. For now, it's just a web app. So it just means you just go to on the internet. Let me find it. Okay, right. So go here now so that I know you can do it. This is the web app. There's a ton of courses on here. So there's loads of free stuff. If you go to, let me share my screen. That one, I think. So if you go to the web app, so you might go, that's the first page. Do not subscribe to anything. It's all free. You can create an account, but it's free. So you want to go to this one in here, and that's where you'll find last week's recording. I'll put this week's recording in there. There's the attachment quid in there and a load of books and links and stuff on resources. And over the next couple of weeks, I'm going to be putting in loads of resources as well. So on emotional needs and things like that. There's a lot of free content in here that you can absolutely help yourself to. There's foundation training on here, which you might have seen. It says it's premium content, but if you click on it, there's most of it is free. So it's all in there and free. Okay, so enjoy that one. And it's a great, I mean, so I don't normally, blow my own trumpet, as it were, but that's really good. Like that, I'm really proud of the app. Let me talk you through what else we got. Okay, so we've got free resources in there. There's a ton of stuff. Even in the foundation, there's loads of stuff about relabeling somebody, because that's massive. If you listen to the labels that partners have for each other, and then you're interacting as if they're really that way, and that's really what you think of them, you're never going to change that, because that person cannot escape the label that you've given them, even if they wanted to. So you have to relabel people and interact with them as if they're the best version that you would like to interact with. Same with your kids as well, to be honest. So there's a relabeling exercise in the foundation course on there. And then if there's paid things that you're interested in doing, let me tell you what you could do if you wanted to. So if you want a free 45-minute session, provided you've not had one before, you can just have a free session with me. And in that 45-minute session, I can probably answer most of your questions. If you wanted to have, if there's couples that you know, for example, that need help, then what I do is, rather than these like massive packages of coaching, which for some people is just out of their budget, even just having what we call a dynamic diagnosis session, which is two free 45-minute sessions, and then a 2-hour deep dive into their dynamic. So they tell me their personal stuff first. Then we have a 2-hour couple session where I basically ask them lots of different questions, see their reaction to each other, pull all the trigger response stuff out, and I get it literally kind of mapped out for them, all the labels, all the all the trigger response loops, and then say, right, this is now what you need to do. So it could be just a communication issue. It could be, your unmet need here needs work and blah, blah, blah. Or you've got to have a session on, of therapy on that, because that's going to drive you crazy. But it doesn't have to be me that they work with, obviously. But at that point, they can either work on it themselves, I'll point them in, in the direction of the resources, or they can have some individual coaching with me, or they can do a course that I'm doing. So I'm doing a 10-week relationship course where we go each week into a different topic. So you can see it's the slowest slides imaginable, isn't it? You've got your dinner waiting for you. There we go, it'll come in. So you can see that we can cut, we're covering everything, but in a 1 week at a time, going through all of these little aspects of relationships. If you're a coach, obviously it will really help, because you'll understand how to actually coach your clients through their relationship stuff as well, bringing in stuff from the Gottmans and the kind of research that they've done. Right now, couples tickets are half price. So basically what that means is, instead of an individual ticket, you can get a couples ticket for less than the price of one ticket. So it's actually cheaper to go for a couples ticket and then invite a mate to come with you. You'll get your own logins and everything. And then you come on the live training if you want, Saturdays, 3rd of May for 10 weeks, 10:30 to 12:30. And then you'll have the recordings as well. So my recommendation for couples at this point is, if you're on a budget, which, let's face it, most people are, then do the couples course and do it with a friend, like a busy mate or something, and then you only pay, it's like £212.50 for the 10 weeks each, and then have your partners watch the recordings. So then you get 4 people essentially the access for £425 for the 10 weeks, and you get to keep the recordings, obviously. So that's my kind of recommendation to get the most out of that. And then if you want the dynamic diagnosis, you can get another £50 off that if you do the course and that at the same time. So and I'll send it, all of this is on the link for my website, which is relationshipalchemist.com, and then / recreating relationships. So I'll send you that link as well. Where's my thingy gone? Let me just pop it in the chat now. And then all those links and the what's they called? The voucher codes are on there. But if you've got any issues, then just ask me. There you go. So recreating relationship course, all the information about the course is on there, the content, the dates, the times, and you can just watch the recordings if you can't make the dates. So that's perfectly fine. And then you can have, yeah, essentially 4 people access. What's going on with my slides today? Okay. At some point, when I have more time, I'll put on the Healing Your Relationship Blueprint, which is more of a kind of personal healing journey, but it will be for a small group of people and by application only. So we'll take on a select few. You've got, assuming that you're right for it, you can come on that. But for now, thank you for coming to my TED Talk on relationships. Have you got any questions? I would love to hear them if you have.
I was looking at doing your course, Jess, but with the best one in the world, I haven't been in a relationship for God knows how long. Although the last one didn't end so very well.
Right.
Yes, I work with other people, and I'm thinking about doing it so that I learn for that.
I would say you've got daughters, haven't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. So one of the most amazing things, like I said, the best thing for me is to be able to say to a couple that ultimately love each other, those that don't love each other and don't like each other, then, it's usually helping them just to leave each other. But for those people that actually love each other, when they're really struggling with this, just to be able to say to them, what's your attachment style? Like, what's an attachment style? Oh, okay. Well, and all listening to what they're complaining about in a relationship, for example, and to be able to say, well, it sounds like, he's dismissive avoidant. That's not his fault. You're interpreting this as that, and maybe you're like this. And actually just being able to put words to it can be enough. So
Yeah.
even I'm so glad that I know this for my kids. That's I would say, regardless of my own relationship. But friends, you no longer have to sit there and listen endlessly to kind of, oh, they've done that again. It's like, okay, why don't you look at the issue, which is X, Y, and Z. So as a coach or as a mum, I think it's just so useful. That's what I would say. Yeah, I think you should do it. I think you should do it. I think everybody should do it. Oh, it'd be fun anyway. Be lovely. It'd be so nice. Be nice group of people, and we have more time to get to know each other as well, rather than a sort of stop tour.
And that's that 10-week course, is it, Jess? You're talking about that.
That's the 10-week one, yes. The healing one, I don't have the capacity to do that at the moment, so time wise. Yeah, the 10-week course, or yeah, I think the diagnosis, the dynamic diagnosis, which is not easy to say. For me, that is my favorite thing to do, is to talk to couples and tell them, look, it's not your fault, it's here. Look, this is basically map it out for you, what's going on. And I love it. I would happily do that all day, every day. I think it's really, really important. So yeah, that can be enough. So if you do know somebody who's like really in a pickle, they don't have to have the money for coaching. They just need to know that, and that can be enough sometimes to you know, because I can point people in the direction of, if you can't afford, you know, a course, whatever, here's the books that you should read. And I've put them in the, you know, I've put them in the module on the app. Yeah, because I just think just at least read those, you know, that's a nice easy one. And I'll be adding more material into there as well. Cool. All right, I know people have to go, so another one of these is coming up on, and there'll be another one as well, so if you ever want to come back and just ask questions, you can do. Drop me an email. WhatsApp's better if you're inclined. I'll put my number on the email when I follow it up. Is everybody registered? Everybody registered? I dropped the link into my WhatsApp group, so yeah, just message me with anything you need. And that's it for tonight. Thank you everybody for coming, and I will see you very soon.
Thank you so much, Jess. I need to go. Take care.
Thanks, Jess.
Thank you, Jess.
Bye. Good evening, everyone. Bye. Bye, Jen. Bye, Emily. Bye, Steph. Oh, bye, Cynthia.
I was going to say, Jess, just one very, very quick question before I go. The Heal Your Relationship